Verse 9 says, then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I remember my sins this day. And then he says something else. When Pharaoh was wroth with his servants and put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker, each one of us dreamed a dream in one night. He and I, each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. And there was with us a Hebrew youth, a servant of the captain of the guard, and we related to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each man he interpreted according to his own dream. And it came to be as he interpreted for us, so it came to be. He restored me to my office, and he hanged him. And obviously it was a symbolic dream that they had no way of understanding before Yosef comes along and interprets it by the Spirit of God. Now, 2 years ago, 2016 to 2017 Torah portions, I did Torah portion via Shev, and I did Torah portion via Gash as well, next week's Torah portion. And I would say to people, people watching online, to go back and watch those two Torah portions, because this Torah portion kind of fits in the middle of them, obviously. But the way that I was interpreting those Torah portions was about the prophetic pictures, the larger prophetic pictures within them. So this one kind of makes a set of three. I'm not sure if the next Torah portion I do will add to it, but I'd say go back and watch those, because you'll get greater understanding to this if you watch those. Obviously the cupbearer is the guy that gives the Pharaoh the wine. The baker, the guy that gives him the bread. So he restores the cupbearer, the one with the wine, and he hangs the baker. Well, we've got Yeshua's body. The bread represents Yeshua's body, which was broken for us, and his blood is the blood of the covenant by which we're washed clean of our sin. Okay, so we're restored by the blood, and his body was broken for us, which is a prophetic picture within that. I don't think I actually explained that very well the first time I went through this idea. Okay, verse 14 says, then Pharaoh sent and called Yosef, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon, and he shaved and changed his garments, and he came to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Yosef, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one to interpret it. Now I myself have heard it said of you that you understand the dream to interpret it. I covered this in Torah portion via Gash, so I'm not going to go through it again. And Yosef answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. Let Elohim answer Pharaoh with shalom. Okay, and this is a really, really important point for us all to recognize here. Okay, Yosef, immediately on being told, I've heard it said of you that you can do this. He's going to do something by the Spirit of Elohim. And because he does it by the Spirit of Elohim, he proclaims that exactly so that it's understood. We saw before what it was for, so that they didn't have belief in the wisdom of the world, but rather in the power of Elohim. In Genesis 40, verse 8, he says something very similar when it comes to him interpreting the dreams of the cupbearer and the baker. Okay, we each have dreamed a dream, and there is no one to interpret it. And Yosef said to them, do not interpretations belong to Elohim? Relate them to me, please. So he gives the glory to Elohim again. In Acts 3, 4-12, it says, and Kepha and Yochanan, looking steadfastly at him, said, look at us. So this was the lame man who was outside of the temple. Look at us. And he gave heed to them, expecting to receive whatever from them. But Kepha said, I do not have silver and gold, but what I do possess, this I give you. In the name of Yeshua, Messiah of Nazareth, rise up and walk. And taking him by the right hand, he lifted him up, and immediately his feet and ankle bones were made firm. And leaping up, he stood and walked, and went in with them into the set-apart place, walking and leaping and praising Elohim. And all the people saw him walking and praising Elohim. And they recognized him, that it was he who sat begging alms at the lovely gate of the set-apart place. The noun, the lovely gate, it's a name. It's not an adjective. It's not describing it as lovely. Of the set-apart place. And they were filled with wonder and amazement at what befell him. And as the lame man who was healed was clinging to Kepha and Yochanan, all the people ran together to them in the porch, which is called Shlomo, was greatly amazed. And seeing it, Kepha responded to the people, Men of Israel, why do you marvel at this? Or why do you look so intently at us, as though by our power or reverence we have made him walk? Okay, nothing to do with us. Okay, people come to you. I mean, people will say to me from time to time, they'll be like, oh, you've got amazing understanding of the word. But I take pains to explain to them, no, it's not me. It's not me. I pray for wisdom over things. I pray that Yehovah will guide me. And then he puts these things before me. It's not of me, though. And it's really important that we have this attitude. 2 Corinthians 3:4-5 says, and such trust we have toward Elohim through the Messiah, not that we are competent in ourselves to reckon any matter as from ourselves, but our competence is from Elohim. Our righteousness is from Elohim. When we do things, okay, and we're seen in the eyes of people to do things that are good, all we are doing is we're copying Elohim, basically. We're imitating him. So our righteousness does not come from us. It's not our righteousness. Okay, you hear it spoken of often, you know, Christ's righteousness or the righteousness of God. You've got Christ's righteousness. Well, we do have Christ's righteousness, but that doesn't mean that it's not the things that we do. Okay, we know the verse, little children, let no one deceive you. He who does righteousness is righteous even as he is righteous. We've got his righteousness, but we could change this competency here so that not that we are righteous in ourselves to reckon any matter as from ourselves, but our righteousness is from Elohim. 1 Corinthians 2:4-5 says, and my word and my preaching were not with persuasive words of man's wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power, in order that your belief should not be in the wisdom of men, but in the power of Elohim. So it's important that we recognize this. And that we show other people, if that's what it's for, if it's to show other people that power comes from Elohim, we can't just kind of like, if they say something to us, not then say, it's not of me, it's of Elohim. Okay, this good act, the reason that I've done this thing, I've done it because it's written in the Torah of Elohim. It's important to point these things out. Well, verse 17 says, and Pharaoh said to Yosef, see, in my dream I stood on the bank of the river, and saw 7 cows coming up out of the river, fine looking and fat, and they fed amongst the reeds. Then saw 7 other cows coming up after them, poor and very ugly and lean of flesh, such ugliness as I have never seen in all the land of Mitzrayim. And the lean of flesh and ugly cows ate up the first 7, the fat cows. Yet when they had eaten them up, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were as ugly as at the beginning. Then I awoke. Okay, so remember that. The fat cows come up first. When the ugly cows, the skinny cows come up, they eat the fat cows, but it appeared as if they'd never eaten the fat cows. Also, I looked in my dream and saw 7 heads coming up on one stalk, complete and good. Then saw 7 heads withered, lean, scorched by the east wind coming up after them. And the lean heads swallowed up the 7 good heads. And I spoke to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Yosef said to Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. Elohim has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Again, think of Nebuchadnezzar. He was on his bed wondering what was going to happen, and then Elohim shows him what he was about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years. It is one dream. And the 7 lean and ugly cows which came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty heads scorched by the east wind are 7 years of famine. This is the word which I spoke to Pharaoh. Elohim has shown Pharaoh what he's about to do. See, the 7 years of great plenty. Okay, that's the first one. And the word in the Hebrew is savah. Okay, and it's savah gadol. Okay, great plenty. Like the high priest is the Kohen Gadol. Okay, it talks of greatness or highness. 7 years of savah gadol are coming in all the land of Mitzrayim. And this word savah is very interesting. It's only actually used 8 times in Scripture. And we've got it used here in the physical. Obviously, it's talking about physical plenty in this. But we can also see it used elsewhere in Scripture, and we'll look at that as we go on, and that teaches us about the spiritual as well. But after them, 7 years of famine shall arise, and all the savah be forgotten in the land of Mitzrayim, and the famine destroy the land. Okay, well, most of them, I think 6 of the usages of this word savah are within this narrative. And the savah shall not be remembered in the land because of the famine following it, for it is very severe. So remember that, okay, the savah will not be remembered because of the famine that followed it. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice, because the word is established by Elohim, and Elohim is hastening to do it. So this, that we've got this physical happening of here, represents the physical. If we remember, it will not be remembered because of what followed it. Okay, and the word is established by Elohim. Elohim's hastening to do this. Amos 8:11 gives us a nugget of the spiritual picture. It says, see, the days are coming, declares the Master Yehovah, that I shall send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but for shemaring the words of Yehovah. Okay, so the famine can represent not shemaring the words, disobedience to the word, not obeying the words of Yehovah. Ezekiel 18:24 says, but when a righteous one turns away from his righteousness and does unrighteousness according to all the abominations that the wrong one has done, shall he live? All his righteousness that he has done shall not be remembered. Okay, so we've got the famine, that's not shemaring the word of Elohim. Okay, so the opposite of that, the plenty, that is to obey the word of Elohim. So the righteousness, okay, he will do his righteousness up until a point, and then there will be this famine. There's not shemaring the word of Elohim, but all of his righteousness which he's done will not be remembered, just like all of the plenty would not be remembered. Deuteronomy 28:47-48 says, because you did not serve Yehovah your Elohim with joy and gladness of heart for all the plenty, you shall serve your enemies whom Yehovah sends against you in famine. So again, we've got these two concepts, that the plenty comes first, and then the famine comes afterwards, in this case because they did not serve Yehovah with joyness and gladness of heart. In Micah 6:14, okay, think of the skinny cows that came up and ate the cows of the plenty, ate the fat cows. Okay, it says, you shall eat but not be satisfied, and your inside be empty. Okay, this is what happens. This is the curse which comes upon them, where they eat of the plenty but they're not satisfied, which is exactly what we see pictured in the dream. We remember that all of these things and all of the happenings and all of the dreams that people can have, they're all founded on the word of Elohim. Okay, either obedience to the word, disobedience to the word, and it's all just exactly the same thing happening over and over again, but manifesting in all these different ways. So it should be no surprise that we can look through the word and find these things all over the place. There's probably many more examples than this. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Mitzrayim. Let Pharaoh do this. Let him appoint overseers over the land to take up 1/5 of the land of Mitzrayim in the 7 years of plenty. Okay, so we can see that the plenty, and this is the word savah as well, and see that the plenty that's referred to, it can mean various different things in the word. It can mean righteousness. Okay, you do your righteousness, and then it's not remembered when you don't shema the word. Okay, there will come a time when there's a famine of the word, as opposed to there being plenty of the word. And we're going to see these things happen all the way throughout the play out of history. Matthew 24:43-47. The language that's used in this is very similar to the language that we see used with Yosef here. It says, and know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Because of this, be ready too, for the Son of Adam is coming at an hour when you do not expect him. Okay, so Yosef, okay, he is aware and he warns Pharaoh, the master of the house. Okay, he warns him about when this famine is coming, when the thief is coming in this example. Who then is a trustworthy and wise servant whom his master set over his household to give them food in season? This is what Yosef is going to do, isn't it? Set them over the land of Mitzrayim. Okay, set someone wise and understanding to give them food and in season. So who is this trustworthy and wise servant? Blessed is that servant whom his master, having come, shall find so doing. What did Pharaoh do? He comes to Yosef and he sees that he is aware of when this thief is going to come. Truly I say to you that he shall set him over all his possessions. And this is what we see Pharaoh do with Yosef. Proverbs 3 tells us about where we get savah from, where we get plenty from, also where we get wisdom and understanding from. And both of them are different sorts of plenty. My son, do not forget my Torah, and let your heart watch over my commands. For length of days and long life and peace they add to you. Let not kindness and truth forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Okay? All the blessings which are described in Deuteronomy, which will come and will give this plenty, to be followed by famine in disobedience. Thus finding favor and good insight in the eyes of Elohim and man. This is exactly what Yosef at this point finds. He finds favor and good insight in the eyes of Pharaoh because he's walking according to the word. If he'd not been walking according to the word and doing the commands, he wouldn't have been in prison in the first place. Trust in Yehovah with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Know him in all your ways and he makes all your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear Yehovah and turn away from evil. Exactly what we see Yosef doing here. It's not of me, this is from Elohim. He's not leaning on his own understanding, his worldly wisdom. He's trusting in Yehovah. It is healing to your navel and moistening to your bones. Esteem Yehovah with your goods and with the first fruits of all your increase. Then your storehouses shall be filled with savah. What do we have in this picture with Yosef here? We've got this time of savah with which he fills the storehouses. How is this derived? Esteem Yehovah with your goods, with the first fruits of all of your increase. Okay, it's talking about tithing in very much the same language that Malachi speaks of tithing with the storehouse here. Then your storehouses shall be filled with savah. This is one of only 8 times that this word savah is used in Scripture. And as I say, 6 of them are in the narrative with Yosef that we're reading at the moment. The other one is in Ecclesiastes. But this tells us how to get this time of savah. And your vats overflow with wine. My son, do not despise the discipline of Yehovah. Do not loathe his reproof. For whom Yehovah loves, he reproves, as a father the son in whom he delights. Blessed is the man who has found wisdom and the man who gets understanding. This is Yosef. Now we're going to see a different type of savah explained. For the gain from it is better than the gain from silver, and it's increased than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all your delights are not comparable to her. So you've got savah in the material sense, okay? And we see how you get that. But wisdom and understanding is another type of savah, and obviously that wisdom and understanding is the opposite of the famine, which is not shemaring the word of Elohim. Length of days is in her right hand, riches and esteem in her left hand. Her ways are pleasant ways, and all her paths are shalom. She is a tree of life to those taking hold of her, and blessed are all who retain her. Yehovah founded the earth by wisdom. He established the heavens by understanding. By his knowledge the depths were broken up, and clouds dropped down dew. My son, let them not depart from your eyes. Watch over sound wisdom and discretion. Then they become life to your soul and an adorning to your neck. Okay, this is this time of savah. But this time of savah, if not followed properly like the Israelites, they went through times of savah when they all repented and started doing the word. But then they were followed by times of famine, by times of war, etc. Then you would walk safely in your way, and your foot would not stumble. When you lie down, you need not be afraid, and you shall lie down, and your sleep shall be sweet. Do not be afraid of sudden dread, nor the ruin of the wrong when it comes. For Yehovah is at your side, and he shall guard your foot from being caught. Okay? Perfect description of the time of savah. Only goes so far though, and after that, it reverses to its opposite if you don't continue in that. Verse 35 says, and let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming, and store up grain under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And the food shall be for a store for the land for the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Mitzrayim. And do not let the land be cut off by a famine. The word was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. Now, when I've been going through this picture previously, I've identified Pharaoh, this Pharaoh, not the Pharaoh of the Exodus. This Pharaoh is a picture of the Father, okay? Yeshua at his right hand. The word was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, could we find another like him, a man in whom is the spirit of Elohim? So now we've got Pharaoh attributing this to the spirit of Elohim, which is the whole point. Then Pharaoh said to Yosef, since Elohim has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. Be over my house, you yourself, and at your mouth shall my people kiss. Only in the throne I am greater than you. Obvious picture, Yeshua. Only in the throne is the Father greater than him. And Pharaoh said to Yosef, see, I have set you over all the land of Mitzrayim. And Pharaoh took his seal ring off, put it on Yosef's hand. He dressed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. Again, I direct people, go to the website, go to video teachings, Torah portions, 2016 to 17, Genesis, Torah portion via Shav, and Torah portion via Gash. Okay, you get the understanding of this, what this is actually a picture of. And he had him ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried out before him, bow the knee. And he set him over all the land of Mitzrayim, all the land of Mitzrayim. At the name of Yeshua, every knee shall bow. Pharaoh said to Yosef, I am Pharaoh, and without a word from you, let no man lift his hand or foot in all the land of Mitzrayim. Let all be done according to your word. And Pharaoh called Yosef's name Zaphnath Paneach, and he gave him as a wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. And Yosef went out over all the land of Mitzrayim. Now Yosef was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim. When did Yeshua get baptized? When did his ministry start, for want of a better term? And Yosef went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Mitzrayim. And in the 7 years of Savah, the ground brought forth generously. One of the things that we've got where the word, okay, we've got the famine of the word as opposed to the word being the plenty. One of the things that's happened in history, which is an example of this, is when we've got Yeshua, when he was here with us. We had the word made flesh here with us. You see, 30 years old ties into all of this. And then we've got the time of famine afterwards. And in the time of famine afterwards, we've got grain, or we've got bread, okay, the word being provided by Yeshua during this time when there's a famine of him actually being in the world. And in the 7 years of Savah, the ground brought forth generously. And he gathered all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Mitzrayim, and laid up the food in the cities. He laid up in every city the food of the fields which surrounded them. And Yosef gathered very much grain as the sand of the sea until he ceased counting, for it was without number. Okay, and with obvious allusion here to the children of Israel, those who are actually righteous. And who is it that's gathering them? It's Yosef or Yeshua. And to Yosef were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. And Yosef called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for Elohim has caused me to forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for Elohim has caused me to bear fruit in the land of my affliction. It's interesting, these names, okay, he's forgotten all of what went on in his father's house, and he seems to be celebrating this. Okay, remember Yosef, what he actually knows of these events which have happened. His father sent him to Shechem. Then what happens? He's thrown into a pit and he's sold into Egypt. He doesn't know who's involved in this. He doesn't know that his father wasn't involved. He doesn't know that Reuven stuck up for him. He doesn't know any of that, but you will find that out later. And the 7 years of Savah, which were in the land of Mitzrayim, came to an end. And the 7 years of famine began to come, as Yosef had said, and the famine was in all lands, but in all the land of Mitzrayim there was bread. Okay, so when we had Yeshua with us, we had the time of plenty of the word. The word was actually here, made flesh. Now we've got a time where there's a famine of the word, where Yeshua's not with us. The famine was in all lands, but in all the land of Mitzrayim there was bread. Why was there bread during this time? Because Yosef or Yeshua provided it. When all the land of Mitzrayim hungered and the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, Pharaoh said to all the Mitzrites, go to Yosef, do whatever he says to you. Again, do according to his word. And the famine was over all the face of the earth, and Yosef opened all the storehouses and sold to the Mitzrites. Okay, this idea, if we're thinking of this as the word, Yosef, Yeshua, selling to all of the Mitzrites, can kind of be a bit weird. Where you think of the parable of the 10 virgins, okay, what are they told to do for the oil? They're told, go and buy oil, go to those who sell. And in those parables, as we've looked at before, what you've got is something which is precious, okay? And to go and buy it is almost to desire, go and attain it for yourself. So the famine was over the face of the earth, and Yosef opened all the storehouses and sold to the Mitzrites, okay? The famine was severe in the land of Mitzrayim, as I'm sure that everyone would agree. The famine is severe right now, both of Yeshua, obviously, since he's not with us, or of the word, or of righteousness, or however you, whichever one of the spiritual pictures you ascribe to this. And all the earth came to Yosef in Mitzrayim to buy, because the famine was severe in all the earth. And when Yaakov saw that there was grain in Mitzrayim, Yaakov said to his sons, why do you look at each other? And he said, see, I have heard that there's grain in Mitzrayim. Go down to that place and buy for us there, and let us live and not die. So Yaakov, okay, who's Yaakov? Who's truly Yaakov? Who's truly Yisrael? The true believers, the actual children of Yisrael. Okay, he recognizes that there's grain in Mitzrayim, and he says, go down and buy for us so that we live and not die. And the other Torah portions, as I've gone through, this is a picture of eternal life. And Yosef's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Mitzrayim. This is fascinating, okay? This is obviously the house of Israel. Okay, Yosef, the house of Yosef, the house of Ephraim, the house of Israel. Okay, the 10 tribes. Yosef's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Mitzrayim. It says, Yaakov did not send Joseph's brother Binyamin with his brothers, for he said, lest some harm come to him. Who remained in the land when the house of Israel was scattered amongst the Gentiles as they went out into the world? Okay, you've got Benjamin and you've got Judah. Judah actually goes, but it's referred to as Joseph's 10 brothers. Binyamin remains, a picture of the house of Judah remaining. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. And Yosef was the governor over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. There's also a picture of the millennial kingdom. Okay, all of these things are true because it's the word being the model, being the mold by which all events happen. It's going to be a time when Yeshua is reigning on the earth, and it's going to be a time of plenty when all the nations are going to come to him. After that cycle repeats, Hasatan is released and people go astray. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land, and Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them. And spoke to them harshly and said to them, where do you come from? And they said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. So Yosef recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And when I read this, obviously with the idea in my head, this is Yeshua. Okay, Yeshua recognized his brothers didn't recognize him. What I did is I went to the Septuagint to see what words are used there, so that I could then look for those words in the New Testament to see what it's talking about. So in the Septuagint it says, and when Yosef saw his brethren, he knew them. He epigenoskoed them. Okay, but it's not the normal word for to know. Okay, it means, as the Hebrew word's translated here, recognize. Okay, to just know someone is different than this idea of recognizing them. Okay, but when he saw his brethren, he epigenoskoed them and estranged himself from them, which we'll look at, spoke hard words to them and said to them, whence are you come? And they said, out of the land of Canaan to buy food. And Yosef epigenoskoed his brethren, but they epigenoskoed not him. So what's going on? The word epigenosko Yeah, this is how it says it's used in the Bible. It says to become thoroughly acquainted with, to know thoroughly, to know accurately, to know well, to know, to recognize is really how it's most commonly used. Okay, to perceive who a person is, to know, i.e. to perceive. And this word is used obviously in the physical circumstance here. His brothers didn't recognize him, but he recognized his brothers. But there's a sense in which this word is used, which is spiritual in its application, and it's to know, to recognize something. When you read the word of Elohim, you recognize something in it. I'll show you. John 10, verse 27 says, my sheep hear my voice, and I gnosko them. That's the normal word for know. That's to have knowledge of, from where we get Gnosticism. Okay? I gnosko them, and they follow me. Romans 8:29, there's another version of this gnosko word. Because those whom he knew beforehand, to know beforehand is to prognosko. Okay? He also ordained beforehand to be conformed to the likeness of his son, for he to be the firstborn among many brothers. It's an interesting thing there. For him to be firstborn among many brothers is worth mentioning at this point. Yosef is often a reversal of Yeshua. And the problem that we have with Yosef is he is treated as the firstborn among many brothers, when in fact he's not. He's the youngest. Yaakov's got a problem, hasn't he, with the youngest and giving the younger before the firstborn. And he does so with Yosef. In Matthew 11, 26 to 27, we're going to see this word, epignosko, to recognize. Yea, Father, because so it was well-pleasing in your sight. All have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one epignoskos the Son except the Father, nor does anyone epignosko the Father except the Son. To recognize, to understand, to really truly perceive, except the Son, and he to whom the Son wishes to reveal him. Okay, he epignoskos the brothers. They don't epignosko him, but then what does he do? When do they epignosko him? When he reveals himself to them. Luke 24, 30 to 31, and it came to be when he sat at the table with them, having taken the bread, he blessed, and having broken, he was giving it to them. And their eyes were opened, and they epignoskoed him. His brothers epignoskoed him when he revealed himself again. He disappeared from their sight. 2 Corinthians 13, verse 5 says, examine yourselves whether you are in the belief. Prove yourselves, or do you not epignosko yourselves? It's not really, do you not know yourselves? It's, do you not recognize yourselves that Yeshua Messiah is in you? Colossians 1, 3 to 6 says, we give thanks to the Elohim and Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah, praying always for you, having heard of your belief in Messiah Yeshua and of your love for all the set-apart ones, because of the expectation that is laid up for you in the heavens, of which you have heard before in the word of the truth of the good news, which is come to you, as also in the world it is bearing fruit and growing as among you, since the day that you heard it and epignoskoed the favor or the grace of Elohim in truth. When they've read the word, they have epignosko, they've recognized the grace of Elohim in truth. 1 Corinthians 13, 9 to 12. It's interesting. He says, for we gnosko in part, we know, we have knowledge of in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part shall be inactive. When I was a child, I spoke as a child, I thought as a child, I reasoned as a child. But when I became a man, I did away with childish matters. So he's talking about how things will be in the future, okay? And us at the moment, we're like children, but it'll be different in the future. We gnosko in part. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I gnosko in part, have knowledge of in part, but then I shall epignosko. I shall recognize, I'll understand, I'll perceive these things as I have been epignoskoed. Okay, again, he epignoskoed his brothers, but his brothers did not epignosko him. 2 Corinthians 1, 12 to 13 says, for our boasting is this, the witness of our conscience that we've behaved ourselves in the world in simplicity or sincerity of Elohim. That's an amazing boast. Our boast is this, that our conscience says that we've behaved properly towards Elohim. Not in fleshly wisdom, but in the favor of Elohim, and much more toward you. For we are not writing any other matters to you than what you read or epigenosko. Okay, we're not saying anything to you other than what you've already read and understood, the word of God. Now I trust you shall epigenosko even to the end. We know, of course, that to some people they're given and it will be taken away. Paul saying, I trust you will epigenosko. You'll recognize these things to the end. In 1 Corinthians 14, 37 to 38, he writes something very similar. He says, if anyone thinks himself to be a prophet or spiritual, let him epigenosko what I write to you, that they're a command of the master. He's saying, we don't write anything to you that you have not read and epigenoskoed. So he's saying, if anyone thinks they're a prophet or spiritual, let them epigenosko that what I write to you, they're a command of the master. And if anyone's ignorant, let him be ignorant, which is an interesting thing to consider when we consider how many people reject Paul. Okay, they reject Paul because they don't epigenosko in his writings the things which are from the Torah and from the prophets. If anyone's ignorant, let them be ignorant. Genesis 47, 7 to 8 then. When Yosef saw his brethren, he epigenoskoed them. He recognized them, perceived them, understood, and estranged himself from them and spoke skleros words to them. Okay, so he epigenoskoed them. He spoke skleros words to them because he epigenoskoed his brethren, but they did not epigenosko him. John 6, verse 60, we see this word skleros used here. Therefore, many of his disciples, having heard, said, this word is skleros. Who is able to hear it? What did the 12 say? They said, where else shall we go? Okay, you have the words of life. But to these people, he spoke hard words to them. And he was still actually estranged from these people. Okay, when Yosef saw his brethren, he epigenoskoed them and estranged. Allotrionto. Okay, if you remember when we went through the word for stranger, okay, one of them was allotrios. Allotrionto is a related word. He epigenoskoed his brethren, but they did not recognize him. Colossians 1, 17 to 23 uses this word. It says, and he is before all, and in him all hold together. He's the head of the body, the assembly, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that he might become the one who is first in all. Because it pleased the Father that in him should all fullness dwell, and through him to completely restore to favor all unto himself, whether on earth or in the heavens, having made peace through the blood of his cross. Okay, this is obviously Yeshua, but this is relevant to what's about to happen with Yosef. Okay, this restoration which he's about to make with his brothers. And you, who were once a palotriao, okay, again, a related word, palotriao, in the same way that Yosef made himself estranged, and enemies in the mind by wicked works, but now he is completely restored to favor in the body of his flesh through death, to present you set apart and blameless and unreprovable before him. Okay, remember this relates to Yosef. What we're going to see next relates to Yosef as well as this unfolds. If indeed you continue in the belief founded and steadfast and are not moved, we're tested in our belief. Okay, and if you continue in the belief, then you will be restored to favor unto himself. What we're going to see with the brothers now is the brothers are going to be tested by Yosef. Okay, and as a result of having passed the test, they are then restored to favor. So Joseph saw his brethren, he recognized them, he estranged himself from them and spoke hard words to them. Okay, just like when Yeshua came, he spoke hard words to those who he was estranged from. And said to them, whence are you come? And they said, out of the land of Canaan to buy food. And Yosef epigenoskoed his brethren, but they epigenoskoed not him. You see how it's all a giant picture of Yeshua. But now bearing those things in mind, that they need to pass the test, or we need to pass the test that we're given as as regards faith, now we can understand what happens after this with Yosef. Yosef remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them and said to them, "You are spies, you have come to see the nakedness of the land." It's not really explained what this actually means. He remembered the dreams he'd had about them. Well, what dreams did he have about them? He had that he was going to rule over them. Okay, so perhaps that directs his actions that he's having now. It says, "You're spies, you've come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said to him, "No, my master, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are trustworthy. Your servants are not spies." But he said to them, "No, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land." So they're declaring that they're trustworthy before him. And he says, "No, you're spies. We'll see whether you're trustworthy." They said, "Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And see, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more." In the Greek it says one of them doesn't exist. Yosef said to them, "It is as I spoke to you, saying you are spies. By this you shall be proven." Okay, so what are they going to have now? They're going to be proved. How are we proved? It's our faith. "By this you'll be proven. By the life of Pharaoh, you do not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother while you are kept in prison. So let your words be proven to see whether there's any truth in you." Okay, exactly what happens to us. Let our words, when we profess Yeshua, let them be proven to see whether there's any truth in us or not. "Or else, by the life of Pharaoh, you are spies." And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. Yosef said to them the third day, "Do this and live, for I fear Elohim. If you're trustworthy, let one of your brothers be confined to the prison house, and you go bring grain for the famine of your houses, and bring your youngest brother to me, and let your words be confirmed." Okay, that's the word aman, from where we get amen. Okay, it's to confirm something, it's to agree. "And you do not die." And so they did. So they've got a test of their faith. Well, we've got pictured here a test of our faith. Okay, if you're trustworthy, go and do this thing. Do this thing that you're not going to want to do. Your father's certainly not going to want to do it. Okay, and you do not die. You inherit eternal life. They said to each other, "Truly we are guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the distress of his life when he pleaded with us, yet we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us." They confessed their guilt. Okay, which is necessary for us. They need to be tested as well as necessary for us. But they confess their guilt. This is something that Elohim says that he's going to require of the 10 tribes, okay, or of his people scattered around the earth, the 12 tribes scattered, okay, that we recognize that the reason that the distress has come upon us is because of our guilt. Reuven answered them, saying, "Did I not speak to you, saying, 'Do not sin against the boy'? And you would not listen. And see, his blood is now required of us." They did not know that Yosef understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter. Understand what's going on here. Again, Yosef had no idea that his father wasn't in on this. He had no idea that Reuven stood up for him. He's just learning this information now. And he turned himself away from them and wept, but came back to them and spoke to them. And he took Shimon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Yosef commanded, and they filled their sacks with grain, also to put back every man's silver to his sack, and to give them food for the journey. And thus it was done for them. So they loaded their donkeys with the grain and went from there. And as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his silver, for it was there in the mouth of his sack. And he said to his brothers, "My silver has been returned, and there it is in my sack." And their hearts sank, and they were afraid, saying to each other, "What is this that Elohim has done to us?" So they came to buy this grain. Okay, and we've seen that the grain is a picture of righteousness, a picture of various other things. Okay, they've tried to buy it with silver. And then they say, when they see that the silver's there and they've not been able to spend the silver on it, they say, "What is it that Elohim has done to us?" Exodus 30, 11 to 13, it says, "And Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, when you take the census of the children of Israel to register them, each one shall give a ransom for his soul to Yehovah when you register them, so that there is no plague among them when you register them. Everyone among those who are registered is to give this, half a shekel according to the shekel of the set apart place." So they were to pay silver to ransom their souls. Okay, that's the ransom for the soul, is silver. This is the physical picture. We've got the spiritual picture as well. We've got Yeshua who pays the ransom for our souls. We're told this about that though. Psalm 49, 5-9 says, "Why should I fear in the days of evil when the iniquity of my supplanters surrounds me?" It's interesting that, the iniquity of my supplanters. The word is akai ve. Okay, akai ve. It's from the word akev, just a modified version of the word akev that makes it my supplanter as opposed to supplanter. Akev is heel. Yaakov is called heel grabber or supplanter. So this, if you're reading it in Hebrew, you'd recognize that this is the root word of Yaakov, the iniquity of Yaakov. Those who are trusting in their riches and who are boasting in their great wealth. A brother does not redeem anyone at all, neither give to Elohim a ransom for him. The redemption of their lives is costly and it shall cease forever. Okay, when Yeshua came and paid our ransom, he freed us from the power of death. Nobody can go to Elohim and say, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you this load of silver. There's loads of silver here. I'll give it to you, and then I can have the ransom for my soul." Brother can't do that. That he should live forever and not see the pit, not see destruction. But Elohim does redeem my soul from the power of the grave, or the power of Sheol, as it says, which is the power of death that Yeshua ransomed us from. So we've got the spiritual picture of what's going on here to understand what we see with the brothers when their silver is returned and they're not able to pay for this grain. So they came to Yaakov, their father, in the land of Canaan, and reported to him all that befell them, saying, "The man, the master of the land, spoke to us harshly and took us for spies of the land. But we said to him, 'We are trustworthy, we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is today with our father in the land of Canaan.' And the man, the master of the land, said to us, 'By this I know that you're trustworthy. Leave one of your brothers here with me and take food for the famine of your households and go and bring back your youngest brother to me. Then I know that you are not spies, but that you are trustworthy. I give your brother to you and you move about in the land.'" We're given test of faith. Okay? The test of faith shows Yehovah that we are trustworthy. He gives us something that we're not going to want to do. He sees then whether we'll do it. And now Yaakov is put in this position. Okay, I'm going to be tested whether I'm trustworthy. Now, it's not a test of faith. He's not being unfaithful to not do this, but he shows us a picture of ourselves in this situation. They came to be, as they emptied their sacks, that look, the bundle of each man's silver was in his sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of silver, they were afraid. And Yaakov, their father, said to them, "You have bereaved me. Yosef is no more, and Shimon is no more, and you would take Binyamin. All this is against me." Okay, think of us in a test that happens in our life. What he's actually saying here, Yosef is no more, Shimon is no more. Okay, you would take Binyamin, and Binyamin's going to die. That's all actually completely wrong. All of that's completely wrong. And we do the same things when we have tests, because Yehovah knows what the truth of the matter is. He knows how it's actually going to turn out. But we assume, don't we? We assume, oh no, if I do this, then it's not going to be good and I'm going to lose my job, or, you know, whatever the outcome is. If I do this thing, it's going to be bad for me. And this is essentially exactly what Yaakov is saying. All this is against me. So Reuben spoke to his father, saying, "Take the lives of my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I myself bring him back to you." But he said, "My son is not going down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If any harm should come to him along the way in which you go, then you will bring down my gray hair with sorrow to Sheol." So again, he's reacting in exactly the same way that we do when we're tested. No, you can't do that. Or I can't do that. I can't do what is required of me to show that I'm trustworthy, because if I do, it's going to be terrible. It's not going to work out well. It's going to be the end of me. And there's a third part. We're going to continue with this picture of the test, because it's important for us to recognize that Yosef is doing the reverse of what Yeshua does. We've got this physical situation. Yaakov's not showing a lack of faith, but he's showing us what we do when we have a lack of faith. He's also going to show us the correct way to deal with the situation. We'll come back in a little bit.